Recently, there's an explosive news in the field of quantum mechanics. Computer scientists at MIT have used mathematical methods to find that when the temperature reaches a certain height, the heat will cause quantum entanglement to completely disappear. They call this phenomenon sudden death. This means that all the advantages of quantum computers will no longer exist, although scientists cannot explain the reasons behind it. I found that Chinese philosophy can interpret it very well. No matter how far the time and space are, entanglement can be carried out. Isn't it similar to what we call telepathy? I believe that everyone has experienced or heard that at the moment when a loved one dies, we can feel panic or physical abnormalities. This is fate. When will fate end? When we are hot at night, restless, and full of worldly troubles, we will focus on the surface phenomena and cannot perceive telepathy. Fate comes and goes, and there is a fire in the child. So, how can we prolong it? The so called fate transcends the barriers of life and death. Today, let us talk about the theory of quantum immortality. Let's talk about daily life. We face many choices every day, such as whether to drive or take the subway today. Quantum mechanics tells us that at some level, each choice may occur in a parallel universe. You choose to drive in universe A, and you choose to take the subway in universe B. This idea is the superposition state in quantum mechanics, where things are in a state of coexistence of multiple possibilities before being observed, and this is extended to the proposition of life and death. The quantum immortality theory envisions that physicist Shi Everett proposed that even in some cases, even if you die in one universe, you are still alive in another parallel universe. Quantum mechanics has multiple worlds, and each quantum event will cause the universe to split and produce new parallel universes. This means that although you may have died for some reason in the world you are in now, new events have occurred in another universe, and you are still alive. You will always feel that you will not really disappear because you are always alive in a parallel universe forever. These parallel universes exist independently of each other and never intersect. The life experience in each universe is completely different from that in another universe. This raises a philosophical question. If there are countless you in countless parallel universes, then which one is the real you? In each parallel universe, although you are still you, with each decision and event, these you gradually become different. Therefore, Everett's multiverse quantum immortality hypothesis refers to the jump of consciousness. What is consciousness? I said before that I don't think we have free will, but people have will and consciousness. The following concept may be very confusing. If you disagree, you can discuss it and ask everyone a question. Do you think reality is objective or subjective? In daily life, we often think that reality is objective, and consciousness is just a tool to help us understand and perceive this reality. The education we have received since childhood tells us that there are inherent substances and rules in the world. Whether we are looking at it or not, whether we are observing it or not, the sun will rise, right? Objects always have weight and volume, but are these inherent things really inherent? The double slit experiment said that photons can be waves or particles, and the observation itself directly affects the state of matter. What if we have similar quantum phenomena in our daily life? Although we may not be able to experience it because of the huge difference between the macroscopic world and the microscopic quantum world, it does not mean that it does not exist. This leads to biocentrism. It is not the universe that created life, but life that created the universe. This simply subverts our understanding of the universe. The traditional view is that our life is produced after the Big Bang. The universe can be our mother, or it can be independent of us and just follow the laws of physics. American scientist Robert Lanza said, "Why must we be an appendage of the universe, not the universe? Disgusting? Does it sound particularly human, proud, and arrogant? But let's try to interpret it and see if there is some truth. Where do you think consciousness comes from? Consciousness is not a product that gradually develops with the development of our brain. Unlike mathematics and foreign languages, we need to learn them after birth, but a basic element has existed since the birth of the universe. In other words, the reason for the existence of the universe is to provide an environment for life and consciousness to experience it, and we as living beings are just carriers of this consciousness, receiving and processing the information of the universe. That is to say, if our brain is used to receive and translate information, then our body is a converter that converts information into life experience that we can perceive. The death we conventionally understand is our body AK converter. The AK container dies, but consciousness still exists as a signal which can be rerouted to another carrier. Continue to live minus. In short, life is not just a physical body limited to an individual, but a continuous energy or signal. Life continues to exist. Isn't this what the East calls reincarnation? This concept is simply too brain burning. Does quantum mechanics prove the soul and reincarnation? The quantum entanglement mentioned at the beginning, fate is relieved. Let's continue to look at biocentrism in depth. He said that we are not just passively observing the world, our consciousness is actually creating the world. This theory sounds very abstract and complicated, but if we understand it in a more life-oriented way, we will find that it raises a very interesting question. Does reality exist independently, or does our consciousness affect it in some way? As we just said, is the real world objective or subjective? To make this concept easier to understand, let's start with something we experience every day, perceiving the world. For example, you walk down this street and see a tree. You think that this tree is real. It is there whether you look at it or not. This is our traditional worldview. However, biocentrism puts forward a completely different view. Whether the tree exists or not actually depends on your observation and consciousness. In other words, everything in the world is essentially created by our consciousness. Without the existence of consciousness, the so-called external world may not exist as we think it does. Friends, this is what happens when we play games. The game is loading step by step. When we walk into this room will begin to generate, but it may not exist before you enter. Why is the real world not like this? Our consciousness is the generator. When we realize this thing, it begins to become real in front of our eyes. Therefore, consciousness is not a spectator of the universe, but a participant, or even a creator. Descartes Voss passed. I am the universe. In this view, it perfectly answers the problem of the universe's fine regulation in physics and philosophy. Find zero problem. The question is it too coincidental that the universe is so lucky? How did the stars that exploded appear on Earth, and eventually there was life? Why did all these thousands of small details get it right, and eventually humans appeared? If these constants are slightly deviated, the universe may not be able to breed any form of life. Why is the structure of the universe so perfect, just right for the birth and development of life? Is it because we are lucky enough to be the darling of the chosen one? The cosmic center theory says that no, the universe is not an independent object or entity, but is created by life and consciousness. Therefore, the so-called economic regulation is not that the universe exists to cater to life, but because life and consciousness itself shape the characteristics of the universe. We continue to think, if there is no consciousness, what kind of creature would the universe be? The answer of the sutra is that the universe without consciousness is in an uncertain state, similar to the unobserved examples in quantum mechanics, which are in a state of probability cloud before being observed. That is, they have no fixed position or state. Only when the observer, a conscious individual, intervenes will they explore a certain state. Therefore, the entire universe becomes real only when we perceive and experience it. Let's take an example from daily life. We dream every day. Dreams and reality are very different, but when we are in a dream, it is difficult for us to distinguish between them and reality. Only a few times do we know that we are dreaming, and when we wake up, we forget most of the dreams. Let's think about it. Does forgetting prove that dreams do not exist or prove that they are not real? Elderly people with Alzheimer's disease may forget their past. Does this mean that their past does not exist? If you say that the two cannot be compared at all, dreams and reality are not the same thing. Dreams are just random neural activities of the brain when it is resting. This is true, but in the real world, we also construct them in the spine and in the brain through the same nerves and the same electrons. If they are all products of consciousness in the brain, the so-called reality and dreams are just different manifestations of our consciousness. It seems that we accidentally proved the possibility of the existence of precognitive dreams. That is, it is the result of quantum entanglement of consciousness. Back to the topic, think about it. If biocentrism is correct, it is not the universe that creates life, but life that creates the universe. What will be the result? That is, time does not exist, and space does not exist. We see time as linear and irreversible, from the past to the present and into the future. This sort of time makes us aware of the finiteness of life. That time is constantly passing and eventually leads to death, which means the end of life. However, from the perspective of biocentrism, time is not just a product of consciousness, nor an objective fact that exists independently in the universe. It is just a tool for understanding and perceiving reality. In other words, the flow of time we feel is actually an illusion created by our consciousness in order to organize energy into an orderly sequence. Consciousness creates the concept of time for us through the perception of the past, present, and future, so that we can act, remember, and plan in the world. To give a simple example, when you are doing human-like sports, 2 minutes is as long as eternity when you are doing ordinary support. But when you travel, 10 days and a half months pass very quickly. Our perception of time depends largely on our state of consciousness and the way we experience it. If time only operates within our consciousness and brain framework and is not a necessity outside of consciousness, then there is no time. Is there still death in this world? Our universe only exists in the eternal present. Good friends, we find me, answer the question of how long you will love me for your other half, that is, the eternal present. By the way, Jiliwala talked about quantum philosophy for 10 minutes. We found that human arrogance can even justify itself. Jiajia, I am a pragmatist. All thought experiments must be implemented. Biocentrism creates the universe, which is the most proof of the theory that fate is not predetermined by heaven. When you walk in the garden and see a flower, you may notice its color, shape, and fragrance. These perceptions are not inherent in the flower itself, but the result of filtering and interpreting through our consciousness. If you are not aware of the existence of this flower, then within your perception, the existence of this flower has no meaning. It can even be said that its existence is vague until you notice it. This explains why different people have different feelings and views on the same thing. We are all constructing different realities through our own consciousness. This subjective experience and the intervention of consciousness are a vivid example of how consciousness affects reality. then the external world that determinism says is completely uncontrollable is wrong. Our conscious world can completely affect this world because our consciousness creates the world and the universe, and the logical relationship is completely reversed. Then, when you set a goal and keep working to achieve it, your consciousness is guiding your behavior, and in this way, gradually creating your future reality. If you keep believing that you can succeed and take action, this belief and the energy of consciousness will gradually affect your external environment and eventually turn that goal into reality. The thought experiment of the laws of quantum mechanics psychology ends. We are the creators of our lives.